Okay, let's get started. Yesterday we were talking about the ability or inability of a person to refuse a gift. So we said yesterday that it doesn't stand to reason that if you want to give me a gift and I refuse on the spot, that I shouldn't have the opportunity to refuse. Let's say I view that as an undesirable thing. I don't want to acquire it. So the Gemara says that for sure is okay. If you refuse it at the time of the giving, then of course there's no transfer of ownership. The issue, said the Gemara, is what if a person receives a gift or makes a kinyan to receive a gift, and then afterwards protests and says, hey, I don't want this. So his silence initially is an indication that he accepted it willingly, and it's only after the fact that he's protesting. Well, sorry, buddy, by that time it's too late. And so it's already yours. You got to live with it, or find someone else to take it off your hands. But it's yours. That's what we established. And now we're just going to, filter it a little bit more in this next Gemara. Second line on Daf Kuf Lamed Ches. Amar of Nachman Bar Yitzchak Zichalo al Yedei Acher B'Shas Sakal B'Sof Tzavach Banu LeMachlokas Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel v'Rabbana. Let's say you have a person who wants to give a gift to his friend Ploni, and he calls over another guy and he says, do me a favor, make a kinyan so that you will acquire my estate on behalf of Ploni. Not for yourself, but on behalf of Ploni. And Ploni is standing right there, and initially he's silent, and then he says, no, I don't want this. So this is a machlokas, and in this situation it's a little bit different, because instead of just being two people involved, there's a third person involved who's making the kinyan on behalf of Ploni, on behalf of the recipient. So this is a machlokas between the Chachamim and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. The Tanya, hakosev nechasav la'acher v'hayu bohen avadim. Let's say a person gifts all of his estate to Ploni, and part of that estate is a group of slaves. Now, the reason why a person may not want to have slaves, besides the stigma of slave ownership, which may not have existed in the times that this is written, but it's a huge burden. It's a huge burden. I got to keep these slaves in my house. I've got to feed them. I've got to do all of these things. Maybe it's not something that I want. Maybe I don't have so much property that I need slaves, and now I'm going to have to feed them all. So, va'amar hala efshi bahen. And so the recipient, the Ploni, says, I don't want these slaves. So im haya rabban sheni kohen hari elu ochlin betruma. Sorry, you can't refuse. And therefore, if the Ploni recipient is a Kohen, then not only is he forced to accept these slaves as his property, but they even are completely his to the point where they can eat his truma, just like any other eved of a Kohen who can eat the Kohen's truma. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Omer, Keven Sha'amar Hala, Efshi Bahen, Kvar Zachlu Bahen Yarshin. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel disagrees with that. He says, listen, the guy said explicitly, I don't want them. And therefore, they go to the gifter's heirs, not to the Ploni recipient. So, v'havinan ba, v'tanakama afilu omeid v'tzavach, question mark? And the question raised immediately on this brisa is, what are you talking about? Are you suggesting that you Tanakama who say that the recipient has to live with this gift, are you telling me that even if he's standing there and screaming his head off, he's got to live with the gift? That doesn't make any sense. So, Amar Rabbi v'itema Rabbi Yochanan betzavach mi'ikaru d'kuli amalo pligi d'lo kani. Shasakul betzav t'kula basav tzavach d'kuli amalo pligi d'kani. So Rabbi says like this, or some say Rabbi Yochanan. He says, everyone agrees that if the guy is screaming his head off at the time when the gift is made, then he clearly is not going to acquire it. Everyone also agrees that if there's only two people around, the gifter and the Ploni recipient, and he accepts or makes the kinyan, and then an hour later he starts complaining and shrieing, then everyone agrees by that time it's too late. But kipligi shezichalo al yedei acher v'shasakul b'sov tzavach. The only point of machlokes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is if the gift was made via a third party, so that the recipient is not a party to the kinyan directly. He's just there observing the kinyan, the transfer of ownership to him. And then later on, when the delivery truck comes with the avodim, and they say, "Here you go, sir," he starts screaming and says, "I don't want these." So the Tanakama Sover midashase kaninu b'haida katzavach mahaduhu tekahaderbe. And so the Tanakama's position is, sorry, you were silent when the kinyan was made, and now you changed your minds. It's too late. You can't change your mind once you've taken delivery, or once you've accepted the kinyan. Reb Shimon Gamliel Sovar hochiach sof al tchila so v'haida lo tzavach ad hashta desavar ki lo motu liyadi mayat tzavach. And Reb Shimon Gamliel's approach is no. He says, I was standing idly, passively by, not saying anything, not because I consented to the kinyan, but rather because I wasn't a party to it, and I figured, why should I make a scene? What do I need to make a scene for? When push comes to shove and they're ready to deliver, that's when I'll say I don't want delivery. In other words, Reb Shimon Gamliel's attitude is, you can be passively aggressive by saying nothing, and that should not be interpreted as an acceptance of the kinyan. You just say, no one asked me, no one consulted me, and I'm not a party to this. And the reason I didn't protest is, well, why should I make a scene? I'll let them know that I don't want it when push comes to shove. Okay, now let's look at another halacha. Tanu Rabban. The Brisa says, Shchiv meira shomer tnu masayim zuz leploni v'shalosh meos leploni v'arbameos leploni ein omrim kol hakoidim b'shtar zoicha. The Brisa says that if a shchiv meira is on his deathbed, and he makes multiple gifts in the same sentence. He says, I want Reuven to get 200. I want Levi to get 300, and I want Shimon to get 300, and I want Levi to get 400. So the fact is that you might have argued that since he lists a sequence of giftees, there's a priority given to the first person on the list, and second priority to the second person. So the Brisa says no. You should not interpret that he's giving top priority to the first guy. And therefore, lefichach yatsa alav shtar choiv goyva mikulam. And therefore, what are the ramifications? Well, let's say there's a creditor on the estate after the shchiv meira passes away, and he says, 10% of the estate is owed to me in a debt. So don't say, well, he gave first priority to Reuven, second priority to Shimon, third priority to Levi, so let's go to Levi first to collect the debt. No, we don't say that. We say that this was all given simultaneously, just that you can't speak simultaneously. You can't say all three names at the same time. So he chose any arbitrary sequence. And therefore, when the creditor collects from the estate, he collects pro rata from each person's gift. So if he's owed 10% of the estate, if Reuven got 200 of the estate, so Reuven has to give him 20. If Shimon got 300 of the estate, Shimon gives him 30. And if Levi got 400 of the estate, so Levi gives him 40. Okay, Aval Omar, but then let's look at the contrasting case. Aval Omar, Tnu Masayim Zuz Leploni Ve'acharav Leploni Ve'acharav Leploni, Omrim Kol HaKoidim B'shtar Zoicha, Lefichach Yatzal of Shtar Choiv Gova Min HaAcharon, Ein Lo Gova Mishulafanav, Ein Lo Gova Mishulafnei Fanav. But let's say the way that the Shchiv Meira phrased the sentence was explicitly saying, I want first Reuven to get 200. Next, I want Shimon to get 300. Next, I want Levi to get 400. Because he phrased it as a sequence of gifts, not as simultaneous gifts, then we're meant to interpret it that he's giving Reuven highest priority of gift and Levi lowest priority of gift. And he wants the gifts to be staggered sequentially such that if a creditor were to come along, the first person the creditor is able to collect from is the last giftee. So if there's nothing in the estate except those three gifts that are given to the three giftees, this is standard halacha, you go to the last recipient of the estate, not to the first. And only if the Levi who got the 400 and the debt is worth more than that, then you can go to Shimon. And if you exhaust Shimon's gift, only then can you go to Reuven. Tanu Rabbana. Shchiv meira sha'omar tenu masayim zuz leploni b'ni b'chor kiro uilo not lan v'notel es b'chorasa. So now the Brisa tells us another halach, and this has to do again with the specificity of verbiage that a shchiv meira uses. If he used the following language, he says, I want you to give 200 zuz to so-and-so who is my firstborn son, as is befitting him. Now those words, as is befitting him, really are superfluous. And so the way that we interpret the words are, the reason that the reason why he used so much extra words is to say that this is in addition to his firstborn inheritance. In other words, he has the Bechorah,
and then additional.
But in addition to what he gets as a Bechor, the double portion as a Bechor, I want him to get an additional 200 zuz.
The 200 zuz come first, though, no?
Well, what you would do is you would separate that out from the estate, and then divide the estate, and he gets a double portion of whatever's left. Yes, exactly. Now, im omar bibichoraso yado al ha'elyona ratza notlan ratza notel bichoraso. But let's say the verbiage of the Shchiv Meira is, I am giving my firstborn son 200 zuz for his firstborn right. Doesn't add any extra verbiage. So then we interpret it to mean that this is his firstborn portion, not in addition to, but this is. And then we have to give the firstborn the right. Listen, if you want, we can do a detailed valuation of the estate, and if it turns out to be more than 200 zuz, you'll get whatever the double portion is. But if you want to get your cash fast and quick, cash and carry, so then you can just take the 200 zuz and just walk away from the whole Yerusha. It's your choice, Bechor. That's essentially what your father wanted. Now, Shchiv Meira Sha'amar Tnu Masayim Zuz Leplonis Ishti Koroila No Lasan Venotelis Es Ksuvasa Im Omar Bicha Suvasa Yada Al Helyona Ratzasa Not Lasan Ratzasa Notelis Ksuvasa. And in a similar vein, if a man on his deathbed says, I hereby award to so-and-so, my wife, her 200 zuz for her kesuva kera oila, as is befitting her, again, using extra verbiage, we interpret that extra verbiage to convey that he wants her to get 200 zuz in addition to what she's entitled to in her kesuva. So she'll get her full kesuva payment plus 200 zuz from the estate. If, however, he says, I just want her to get this for her ksuva without adding any extra verbiage, so then we interpret it as, sweetheart, you can wait until we break down the estate and see what everything is itemized in your ksuva, and you can wait for the whole estate process to unfold, or you can just take 200 zuz and walk away quickly. It's your option, right? Either or. Third case is, Ushchiv Meira Sha'amar Tnu Masayim Zuz Leploni Balchovi kiroilo, notlan vinoiteles chovo, v'im omar bichovo, notlan bichovo. So the third case is a little bit different from the first two cases because we're dealing with the creditor. Now, if the Shchiv Meira says, I hereby, Ploni is my creditor, so give him 200 zuz, as he is entitled to as a creditor, but he adds those extra words, kiroilo. He is my creditor, but give it to him as is appropriate to him. So that extra verbiage also implies that he wants this to be not a payment for the debt, but rather, in addition to paying him for the debt, I want you to give him an extra 200 zuz. You have to be careful the way you say it, because it's not, the Gemara is basically implying this is not to be interpreted as ribis. It's not an additional payment for the debt, but it's a separate gift. Give him a gift, and also pay him for whatever I owe him from the debt that is remaining. But if he says a more simple language, if he says just pay him the 200 zuz for the debt, so then all he's entitled to is to get paid back for the debt. Now the Gemara doesn't deal with here what if it's a little bit over or a little bit under, because then you really have problems if it's over the amount. So that's why the Gemara doesn't go through that detail that he gets to choose whichever one he wants. He can only take the 200 zuz as payment for the debt, assuming that the debt is higher than that amount or equal to that amount. If it's more than that amount, he won't be allowed to take it. And he would.
If it's less than that amount.
If it's less than that amount, he wouldn't be allowed to take the additional amount because that would be ribis, presumably, at least ribis derabana. And so really, what basically the Gemara is suggesting is that if the debt is higher than that amount, he can take that 200 zuz that the testator has designated. Plus, he'll be able to take further legal action if he's owed more than that.
What's the difference between the first two cases, the Bechor and the wife? There's no real difference between the two.
Right, there is no difference between a Bechor and a wife. So the Bryce is giving you two examples of the same case. So the Gemara now says, one, there is really a difference because a Bechor is an heir and a wife is a creditor.
One has a shtar, the other one is
right. Yeah. So the Gemara now says, Mishum da Amar kiroi lo notlan v'notel es chalvo, V'dilma kiroi lo b'chovo ka'amar. So the Gemara challenges the whole premise of the brisa. You're telling me just because he added those two words kiroi lo as is fitting to him, he's entitled to take the 200 zuz in all of these three cases in addition to what is owed to him or her? Maybe all the testator meant to say is pay him the 200 zuz as is coming to him either as a bechor or as a ksuva for a woman or as a creditor. Maybe that's all he meant. So Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Lihuna, Hamani Rebbe Akiva, the Daik Lishna Yasera. So answers Rav Nachman that in the name of Rav Huna, that our brisa goes like Rebbe Akiva, who says that you look at extra verbiage to communicate extra rights to whomever that verbiage is in favor of. Now, the Rashbam points out that, as we'll see in a moment, this is not uniquely Rebbe Akiva's shita. But what the Gemara means to say is that we see from what Rabbi Akiva stated in another case that this is true universally, that when a person uses superfluous language, it is to really benefit the person whom the language is addressing. Now, what's the case? You may even remember this case, because we only had it maybe a couple of months ago. Ditnan velo es habor velo es hadus afal pi shekasav lo veruma b'tzarach likach lo derech divrei Rabbi Akiva. There's a Mishnah that states as follows, that when a person sells a house, Reuven sells a house to Shimon, and contained under the ground in that house is a well. So the halacha is that the well is not included in the sale of the house. And Rabbi Akiva furthermore says that not only is the well not included in the sale, but the seller, if he wishes to access the well that still belongs to him, he needs to specifically purchase rights of access to the well from the homeowner, because the only way to access the well is by going through the house. So the buyer has to sell him explicitly rights of passage, otherwise he won't be able to access the well. And why does Rabbi Akiva say that? Because hamoicher be'ayin yafeh hu mocher. Right? Remember those words? When a person sells, he sells generously. So when I, Reuven, sell you, Shimon, the house, I sell it to you hook, line, and sinker, kit and caboodle, and therefore I abdicate my rights of passage because I've been so generous. The only thing I've retained is the well itself, because that's underneath the house and it's not part of the house structure itself. So even though I've said kavaruma, I even said the depths and the heights of the house, the well is not included, and that's according to Rabbi Akiva. And the Chachamim say no, that a seller is moicher ba'ayin ra'ah. When a person sells, he sells in a miserly fashion. So if he's selling a house with a well underneath, not only is he not selling the well, but he's also retaining rights of passage implicitly without having to explicitly detail that. Umoda Rabbi Akiva bisman she'omer lo chutz me'elo she'en tzarich likach lo derech. But here's where Rabbi Akiva will acknowledge to the Chachamim that the seller does not have to buy rights of passage. When the seller says to the buyer, I am selling you the house except for the well. Now those words, except for the well, do not have to be stated. Why not? Because that's already implicit, that when you sell a house, a well is not included in the sale. So Rabbi Akiva says, why did the guy say except for the well? It's because not only did he mean to retain ownership of the well, but he also meant to retain rights of passage to the well. So Alma keven de lo tzarchu ka'omar litfuye milsa ka'asi. Hachanami keven de lo tzarchu ka'omar litfuye milsa ka'asi. So what we see from here is a general principle that anytime a person uses extraneous verbiage in the terms of a deal, he's trying to provide extra rights to one of the parties. And so therefore, when the seller said to the buyer, I'm holding back the well rights, he doesn't just mean the well, because that was implicit without stating it. He means to hold back more than just the well, which is rights of passage. And here too, over in our case as well, when a person says, I want 200 zuz to go to my firstborn son, as is appropriate for him, which is totally like extra verbiage, he means to give extra rights to the recipient, to say that this is above and beyond what is coming to him as a bechor. Okay, let us go weiter. Tanu Rabban, or as the ksuva case, or as the creditor case. Tanu Rabban, shchiv meira sha'omar, mana yeshli eitzel ploni. A person on his deathbed says, you know something, boys, Plony owes me $100. Make sure you don't forget it. And I want to make sure that all of my heirs will know this so that they can go after Plony. And there are witnesses there at his deathbed. So, ha'edim kosven afal pi she'ein makirin, lefichach keshugoy v'tzorach lahavi raya divrei Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is of the opinion that the edim who hear him say that do not need to verify this statement. Right? All they need to do is just record it. Let them write it down. No verification is needed, and they'll basically leave it up to the Beis Din to sort things out. So therefore, Rabbi Meir says, listen, when the paper comes to Beis Din, they'll read that they're just recording what the guy said. There's no evidence, and if they want the heirs to be able to collect from the Plony, they'll have to bring evidence. It's basically Rabbi Meir takes the James Comey approach, right? Right, which is what? He basically says, I have a memo. I have a memo of what happened. So therefore, so Reb Meir says, what does the memo mean? It means that you wrote down, maybe he has a different version. That's not a verification, right? A memo is meaningless, right? I mean, when you think about it, it's meshuggah what's going on in Congress today. Because they're basically saying, oh, he wrote a memo of what happened, so it must be true. It's not halacha l'moshe misinai. This is his version. A disgruntled employee writes down his version of the facts, right?
Except that has power in courts. Yes.
Well, I'm not going to debate the issue.
No, I'm just saying.
I'm not going to debate the issue, but here this doesn't have power in court. This has no legal standing. And I don't believe that memo could have legal standing other than just basically saying this is his testimony.
No.
He's testifying.
Well.
Right? But this is what the Shchif Meira essentially said as well. The guy owes me $100. That's all we know, is that he said it. Doesn't mean anything else. The Chachamim omrim ein kosven ela im kein makirin lefichach keshu goiva ein sarach lahavi raya. The Chachamim say no. If you Eidim have not verified that there is such a debt, you have no right to write down on a piece of paper that he said it and to sign your names to it, because the Beis Din may misinterpret your signature on that paper and assume that you verified the debt. So therefore, you need first to verify it, and therefore, when Beis Din receives it, they don't have to verify it because they will correctly assume that you, the Eidim, verified it before signing. Amar of Nachman, Amar Lihuna, Tana Rabbi Meir Omer, Ein Kosven, B'Chachamim Omen Kosven. So Rav Nachman says that I have it from Rav Huna that it's the opposite. That Rabbi Meir is the one who says that they can't write it unless they verify it. And the Chachamim say they can write it even though they haven't verified.
But even if they verify it, doesn't mean it's Beis Din to decide if he owes it to him or he doesn't owe it. Like, how would they possibly
It's like a
verify?
shtar.
The Eidim would say that we saw,
if they happen to be
we
there,
saw, or we spoke to Plony and he acknowledged that he owes the money.
and that would.
And that if a guy says in front of two Eidim, I owe so and so money, that's the Eidim can write that down. That a person is allowed to indebt himself in front of two Eidim. Va'af Rabbi Meir lo amar el mishum Beis Din toen. Now, why did Rabbi Meir say that the Eidim can't write it? Because the Rabbi Meir is concerned that since they can write this down without verification, he's concerned that another future Beis Din will come down the road and will read it, and they'll make a mistake, and they'll think that they verified it when in reality they didn't verify it. So, Amar Rav Dimi minahar da hilchasa ein choshishin lebeis din ton. And Rav Dimi minahar da paskins that we don't worry about that. That really we have more confidence in our batei din, in our dayanim, and that when they see a piece of paper that says that the Shchif Meira says that Ploni owes him $100, they're not going to take it as gospel, and they'll verify it first, and therefore the Eidim should feel comfortable writing it down because they can be confident that the Beis Din will not collect it without first verifying the facts. So, frak the Gemara umayshna midarava. But 1 second, Rava seems not to have confidence in a Beis Din. Look at the following case: the Amar Rava ein cholzen elin kein makirin, ve'in memanin elin kein makirin. That a Beis Din, let's say a couple walks into Beis Din and they say we'd like to do chalitza, or a couple walks into Beis Din, the girl says I'm 11 years old and this is my husband. I'm here to do miyun. I'm here to annul the marriage. Right? Beis Din isn't allowed to just accept that without verifying that they're actually either a yavam and a yavama, or a husband and a wife. You can't just take their word for it and go through the chalitza process or go through the miyun process. Lefichach kosvin get chalitza v'get miyun. The Beis Din has to recognize them in order for them to allow them to do it, and therefore lefichach kosvin get chalitza get miyun va'afal pi she'ein makirin, right? And therefore, if a second Beis Din, let me just make sure I read it correctly. I'm sorry. Ein cholzin elam kein makirin, ve'in man elam kein makirin. Lefichach kosvin get chalitza v'get miyun. So therefore, we allow for a second Beis Din to write a get of chalitza or a get of miyun based upon. I'm sorry. We allow that initial Beis Din to write a get of chalitza and a get miyun. Va'af al pi she'ein makirin, even though they don't recognize, like the Rashbam says, "Keven she'ein cholzin elim kein makirin kosven edim get shel chalitza min latira, af al pi she'ein makirin." He says, therefore, the edim, once they witness the Beis Din allowing an act of chalitza to be performed, they can sign on it, even though the edim haven't seen the evidence that this is a yavam and a yavama. We trust that the Beis Din has done its homework, and we have confidence in the Beis Din. So mishum dechoshishin lebeis. So my lav mishum dechoshishin lebeis din toin. So isn't that because we are concerned about it in a second Beis Din making an error? In other words, the fact that we require the first Beis Din to verify that they are yavam and yavam, or husband and wife, before they allow them to do the procedure. Isn't it because we're worried about an errant Beis Din that will come down the road, and once they see that they had a chalitza, they'll permit this woman to marry the guy in their community? Why don't we just say no? Let's just say if two people come to a Beis Din and they say, we're a yavam and a yavama, let us do chalitza. The Beis Din can say, okay, listen, we don't know if you're a yavam and a yavama or not, but go ahead and do chalitza. It couldn't hurt, right? What's the big deal? If you're not a yavam and yavama, go ahead and do chalitza anyway. It's no skin off of our nose. But maybe it's a ruse. Maybe they'll come with that stempel from the Beis Din. They'll take it to another Beis Din, and we'll say, I don't need to get a chalitza, Rabbi. I already got chalitza. When in reality, the guy that came to her to Beis Din was not the brother-in-law, because the brother-in-law was in China at the time, and she didn't want to have to wait a couple of years for the guy to come back from China, so she just pulled some shmendrik off the street and did chalitza with him. So if you're not concerned about a Beis Din making a mistake, why don't we allow the first Beis Din to let them go ahead and do chalitza without verification, and before we allow this woman to get married with the second Beis Din, we'll assume that they're going to verify. That's the question. In the previous case, Rabbi says we're not worried about an errant Beis Din. Over here, we were concerned about an Beis Din making an error. So why is that? So the Gemara says, "Lo Beis Din basar Beis Dina lo daiki, Beis Dina basar edim daiki." So the Gemara answers as follows. It's for a very simple distinction. When it comes to a Beis Din relying on edim, the Beis Din will not rely on edim unless they verify the facts. If edim simply say, "We saw the Shliv Meira tell us that he owes the $100 is owed to him by Ploni," the Beis Din will read the shtar. They're not going to immediately rely on the edim's verification, and they'll check things out before they force Ploni to pay. But that's where we're not worried about a Beis Din making an error. But if Beis Din receives a letter from another Beis Din that we allowed this woman to do chalitza, there's much more grounds for the second Beis Din to assume that the first Beis Din had its facts straight before they allow someone to do a chalitza ceremony. And that's the reason why there's a difference in halacha. So for every time a Beis Din allows protocol to be done in its Beis Din, they must verify that this is a proper protocol. But in other situations where it's just based on witnesses' testimony, there we don't have to worry that Beis Din is going to make a mistake. And therefore we allow Edom to just record what they heard and what they saw. Now let's go on let's finish this off with a very quick Mishnah and Gemara. The Mishnah says, "Ha'av tolei shumachil l'chol mi sheyirtzu ma'sheniach tolush harehu shel yorsh." So this Mishnah is talking about a testator who's a shchiv meira, and he wants one of his sons to get a larger gift than the rest of the estate. So the halacha is that he's within his rights to do that, as we know that a shchimera can reapportion his estate however he wants. But what he does, how is he doing it? He structures it in the following way. He says to his son, you become the title owner from now, but I hold on to the kinyan peiros, to the utility of the land, until the day I die. That's the way we've explained it all along. So therefore, the father and his family can consume the peiros off of the estate until the moment he dies, even though the son already holds title as a kinyan haguf on the land. Now, once the father dies, what about the fruit that is already, the produce that is already ripe and harvestable that's on the property at that time? So the Mishnah says, Harehu shel yorshin. Mashiniach talush harehu shel yorshin. Whatever is harvested already belongs to the rest of the family, but whatever is unharvested, and the Gemara is going to make a diuk in just a second, talush in mechuber lo. That's only if it's harvested at the time of his death does it go to the rest of the years. But if it's still attached to the soil and it's harvestable, but it just hasn't been harvested yet, that belongs to the son to whom he gave the gift, because that's at the moment of death, it's attached to the soil, and therefore it belongs to the son. But wait a minute, hold on. Rega, 1 second. So the Gemara's question is, V'hatanya, but 1 second. This seems to contradict the Brisa. Shamin es hamechuborin lelokeach. That the Brisa says, in a slightly different case, where a father gives gifts to his son the land in that special way that I told you. He says, you have the kinyan haguf from today, and when I die, you'll have the kinyan peiros. You'll get all the peiros that grow afterwards from the estate. Let's say the son decides, you know what I'm going to do? While my father is still alive, I'll make a quick buck, and I'll sell the property to a third party. On the day that the father dies, there's harvestable produce that has not yet been harvested on the estate. The field is lush with growing wheat, stalks of wheat. The halacha is, shamin es hamechuborin lilokeach, that we give the buyer the mechubarin. We give the buyer the mechubarin. So like the Rashbam says, hakosev kol nechasav libeno, v'holach oso benu mochar nechasim halalu b'chaye aviv, v'achar zman mesa avzacha alokech b'ma shemochar lo abein b'gufa shel karka, v'im yesh b'nechasim peiros mechubarin lo zacha alokech. That if whatever's ripe and ready to harvest does not belong to the buyer. It does not belong to the buyer, period. In other words, what we do is we estimate how much from this field is the fully grown wheat worth, and we assess the buyer. He has to give that back to the estate. So here we're saying that the son gets to keep the produce that's still growing, that's still attached to the ground. Why then, by a third-party buyer, do we say just the opposite, that he has to give that value back to the estate? So the Gemara answer is, Amar Ula lo kasha. Ula says it's not a contradiction. Kan bivno, kan ba'acher. Ho'ol v'daito shaladam karova eitzel bino. So the Gemara clarifies that this is a special halacha when a father is giving a special gift to his son. When he's giving a special gift to a child of his, so then we assume that as soon as he dies, he wants his son to get the land and everything that's mechuber to the land, that's attached to the land. But when a father is selling, or the son is selling to a third party, even though it's been given over, the kinyan haguf has been given over to a third party, but it's not the desire of the testator that the produce that's still attached to the ground should be given over to a third party, but rather he wants it to go back to his estate. So again, this is a special halacha only when the gift is made to the son and the son keeps it. But when it's given over to a third party, or if the son sells it to a third party, then the produce that's still attached to the ground goes back to the estate. And this is where we'll hold it for today. Wishing you a good Erev Shabbos.